Thank you for telling me I've been muted. Thanks, guys. Only made it down to the. I was only doing hellos. I was only doing hellos. I was only doing the hellos. I didn't see it. Good thing I read them all. Good thing I read them all. So I said a bunch of good mornings and read all the different comments that were left here. And I'll just say the one that I added some color to was the Sats for Life. Indeed, I hope there is acceleration talk today. There's always going to be acceleration talk. We love the accelerationism. Remember the time to early breakup joiners that I went like 10 minutes or something with the audio blocked? That was crazy. Old times. When you change your setup, nothing but love here. Yeah, it was. In general, I like to start I have it set automatically to start with the mic off because you never know what's going on. I like just 1 second, and it didn't work out for me today. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Thanks for your patience. All right. So, as you know, we like to start every one of these morning gatherings with the fakest news we could find. Moscow time, Moscow time, Moscow times. Let me just add one more of these. Pretty solid as of late. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I like the feedback. Excellent. Never gonna let you do that again. uh, yeah. Well, that time it was because I had a different. The time I let it go 10 minutes was because I had a different setup, and I was running off the iPad because I was not at home, and I just because you're on a different system, I didn't hit the chats. I just went right into it. So I literally went on for 10 minutes. So there you go. Oh, and I'm almost, geez. Not still muted. P-Man, you're a little behind. We're back up and running. I think I'm good. Let me make sure my audio is the way I want it to be. It is indeed. It is good. We're ready to go. Indeed, I almost jumped right into Moscow time without acknowledging our beautiful and predictable sunrise. Just as it was set to do, exactly on time, that sun came up. And I checked before I came online. Bitcoin is running. For the folks who want a DCA today, don't you worry, that Bitcoin is running. So all that's left for us to do here is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Tastes like accelerationism. P-Man, it was me. It was me for a little while. So let's start fresh. I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna get it right. I had a good sleep last night. I have no excuses. Right? I have no excuses today. If I was underslept like I was yesterday, I had a sick kid the night before, so waking up every 2 minutes. If I can't keep the story straight, I'll quit one day for the day if I can't get it right? But that's not today, because today I'm ready to go. We've got a great show. Maybe our best ever. Maybe. We got some great predictions. It looks like our predictions around Bobby Kennedy Jr. are coming true, right? We've been pretty up on top of that. I think I did a show back in maybe November. I titled one about how RFK could lead to accelerationism in Bitcoin. And here we are, right? Here we are. We'll get to that in a second. As you know, we like to start every one of these morning gatherings with the fakest news we can find. Moscow time, Moscow time. What do we got today? This one's from Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg. We got a lot of Moscow times today. I'll get into that in a second. It's Moscow time almost right through. So this is just a little get us started with some Moscow time, right? This is not exactly in our theme for the whole day, but this one here works perfectly. This is Bloomberg. We're talking about inflation. And here's what they have to say about inflation. They say, we've been way too accepting of inflation. It's time for customers to push back against price increases. Corporate profits shouldn't grow at the expense of the economy. So it's your fault. You idiots. You didn't go to the grocery store and negotiate those egg prices, you morons. What are you doing? Get out there. Don't let them put the price up on your stuff. It's your fault, right? And I do take responsibility. I've said it many times. I'm partly behind the inflation in steak, right? I might even be behind it in eggs, but I won't pay. I get the farm eggs, and it doesn't really, I think, ricochet through the economy because I don't really go to specific grocery stores to get them. But I definitely do go and get. The steaks. Not at grocery stores. I get them delivered by butchers, but I'll pay whatever price. I will pay the premium for grass-fed beef. So I'm partly responsible for the inflation, and I embrace it. Right? I'm not going to fight inflation for steak. It's part of accelerationism, guys. Sorry, but here, it's all your fault. You idiots, get out there. Wall Street Silver commented on this piece of fake news by saying the media narrative is that it is our fault that inflation is running hot. It's never the government or the central banks, right? That's what they have to say. I want to add this one little note as well. There's some new dystopian language that dropped all about San Francisco. We're going to talk about San Francisco, other people talking about San Francisco. And here's what some people are worried about, that there's a kind of violent rhetoric against drug workers. That's a new job, drug workers. It's not, it wasn't sex workers. It's the drug workers. That's the thing. That's the thing they say. Mike Solana says, new dystopian language just dropped and highlighted drug workers. Most fentanyl sellers are people who use it as a well, and that doesn't make any sense. And they are trying to survive under the same destructive racist system that replaced opium with morphine, then heroin, then fentanyl. The war on drugs. So, as you know, we've got this. I do this thing in my own brain all the time. I've been doing it for years. I have a great memory when it comes to time and place. For example, 1 year ago today, I left Miami for Canada, and it was time for both the end of Bitcoin 2022, right? We were a little month earlier last year. Bitcoin 22 was in April. Bitcoin 23, of course, May 18th to 20th. So I left today. The show was over. It was over on the Saturday. Today was a Monday a year ago. And luckily, I was able to enter Canada because Canada got rid of its testing for COVID to enter the country. A year ago today was the first day. And due to the synchronicity of the simulation, I actually caught COVID on the last day of the Bitcoin 2022 show. Didn't know it. I just thought I was tired after a few long days and whatever. So I didn't have to take a test. It was the first day possible where I could fly back to Canada and not take a test. The year before, I had to buy a car in Florida because I had to avoid all the craziness with quarantine and the vax and the borders and all that. I flew my kids to New York, drove up, picked them up from Florida, and drove the car I bought in Florida across the border, so I didn't have that trouble. So that worked for me in 2021. 2022, little different because we got lucky. Like I said, we didn't have to go and get tested. I would have failed. I wouldn't have made it. I didn't know until a few days later when I was back in Canada, and then realized, oh, dang, this thing that's me tired after a few days actually lasted for a few days longer, so I'm in trouble. So that was just synchronicity, right? Now, apparently, this is some beautiful synchronicity for Bitcoin 2023. Biden finally got rid of the COVID health emergency in America. So if you're from abroad, you can now come to New York without a vax, without a test. So that's good news, right? We like that good news. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I often have this habit of, what did I do a year ago today? What did I do 10 years ago today? I mark a lot of things. Oh my God, it's been 10 years since I lived in this place or did this thing or whatever. And I'm able to sort of replay almost day by day. I have a good memory for that, individual days, weekends, events. I sort of have a really good organized way of seeing both my history and my memories and cataloging them and all that stuff. So I've mentioned it a few times now that it's been as we are in 2023, it's 10 years since I worked every day professionally in Bitcoin. Now, I wasn't able to move my whole life over into Bitcoin really until the end of 2013. When I started working on it almost day to day at the exclusion of other things. I still had a few things on my table until about 2015, but I was working, making money, learning about Bitcoin, studying Bitcoin, talking about Bitcoin. I was obsessed with Bitcoin as of 10 years ago now. And it was this little price pump. There was a little bit of attention that came to Bitcoin right now, 10 years ago, right now in the spring. And it wasn't the high. This was the beginning of the Mt. Gox started to get into trouble and all that stuff. But I really was, the big, let's say, when it went up to $1,000, that wasn't until December of this year. But there was a little bit of a pump right now. It reached into the hundreds from $30. And for people like me who had just learned about it, this was addictive, right? Seeing the last few days 10 years ago right now was like, oh my God, what is happening? Right? It was one of the coolest things. And what's funny now, as you go back in 10 years, is that we actually now have beautiful, exquisite 10-year-old Moscow time. It's aged perfectly. And people are picking up on it, right? So Dan McCardle says, had a bunch of headlines from 10 years ago today. Washington Post, Bitcoin is ludicrous, but it tells us something important about the nature of money. Nouriel Rabini, gold bug suckers found another irrational, useless bubble fad, the Bitcoin, the bubble flavor of the day. So they are dissing gold for Bitcoin. Matt O'Brien, what was the obvious bubble? Gold, Bitcoin, or cupcakes? Cupcakes. Slate, Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. Why the internet's favorite currency is doomed to collapse. This is great. 10 years of this shit. Kurt Eichenwald had the best one. He had the best one. The logic problems that will eventually pop the Bitcoin bubble. So I actually went, as this is in the Vanity Fair, I went and looked at his logic problems, right? Logic problems. Logic problems. Okay. So one of the best ones he had was that, where is it? Oh yeah, that it popped because it's actually a stock. That was Eichenwald's whole theory 10 years ago. It's actually a stock. It's amazing, right? So 10, yeah, they even said gold was a bubble. Yeah, 10 years ago. So the logic problems that will eventually pop the Bitcoin bubble. So it's an amazing thing. It's been 10 years. Andrew Bailey picked up on it as well. He says that in a tweet here, referencing the Kurt Eichenwald story from 2013. And everyone actually picking up their tweets from what they tweeted 10 years ago now. Andrew Bailey says, I love that we're in the 10-year mark for some of the more egregious Bitcoin obituaries. Poorly informed, strident, and in retrospect, hilariously wrong. It's pretty good stuff, right? So I've said it many, many times here. What one of the most important things we have going for us as Bitcoiners is that we predicted the world we're in. We said it would look like this, and it looks like this. And the ability to predict the future accurately is not because you're an astrologer, tea leaf reader, getting lucky. Now, predicting the future is very hard. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. And the best way to do it is when you more or less understand that there are very few options for the future to proceed in a certain direction other than these things. And that's what a lot of people in Bitcoin believed at the time. It wasn't so much that they believed in Bitcoin from the start. It's that they knew the system that we were exiting was destroyed and entropy had set in and it was useless and no future would come of it. So when you were predicting, especially in the early days, that Bitcoin was going to rise, many people like myself were also predicting that the current system was going to get much, much worse, right? That it was going to get much, much worse. And that was one of the reasons why Bitcoin was going to do well. So as I often say, your ability to predict is often proof that your understanding of the world at the time you made the prediction was accurate, right? Now, it doesn't mean just because you have an accurate assessment of the world today that you can predict, but Bitcoiners were able to. One of the things I often say is our major advantage as Bitcoiners is that it is so easy to imagine the future. It is so easy to imagine a better world when you start understanding what Bitcoin is, how it works, what incentives are at its heart, why people are motivated to join, why people coordinate around it, and all of these things. And that's a really important feature for being able to predict the future accurately because you can see it. Again, it's one of the reasons why Bitcoiners are heavily criticized. Bitcoin fixes this, and oh my goodness. Well, it's because we can actually see the future in a positive way, in a way that inspires us, in a way that motivates us. It's almost impossible to do that with fiat. And we realized that 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was already difficult to imagine a future based on the US dollar, given all the things that were already going on then, right? And now here we are 10 years later, right about so much. Our predictions have come true. Yet the same people, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post, continue to repeat the same garbage. This was a fake news article sent to me by a friend. And it comes from 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, and has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It was an article. Let me find it. I forgot to put it in my notes, even though I have it here. It was an article from the New York Times, and it's talking about the internet, just the internet, right? Forget about. Let me get it. It's talking about the internet. Forget about Bitcoin for a second. They wrote an article all these years ago that goes on and on about how the internet uses too much money, too much energy. How the hell do I not have it here? Here it is. Yeah. So it's called Power, Pollution, and the Internet. And it's published in 2012 in the New York Times. And if you go back and read it, you get a sense that they're writing, especially if you compare it to the article written 2 days ago or published yesterday that everyone's been talking about, this article on Bitcoin mining, this hit piece on Riot, Bitcoin mining and other Bitcoin miners in Texas, predictions that it's going to increase the cost of electricity by 5% or something this year in Texas. All these kind of predictions that they're making about how it's going to be more costly, it's going to cause problems. They have been writing the exact same article. You can swap out internet for Bitcoin for the article they wrote in 2012, and you'd have the same thing. And it just shows that they don't. It's word for word. Chat GPT could have written this article based on the input from the article 11 years ago in 2012 about the internet using too much electricity. It could have written it today just based on a simple prompt: replace internet with Bitcoin, and republish the article. It's the same piece, right? It's the exact same piece. So the idea here is that these folks continue to just say the same story, write the same story, have the same logic, apply it to the different issues. It doesn't matter what. It could be Bitcoin, it could be the internet, it could be any form of technology. You hear about AI all the time now. And the predictions are always the same, right? Don't trust them, trust us, right? We have all the right information. All the things that we support are correct, and et cetera. So what makes it really funny in the context of what's going on today is that these folks 10 years later don't have the same power, nearly the same power they had. Had the New York Times written an article in 2013 about Bitcoin's energy use the same way it did about the internet, it would have had a much larger effect. Now, Bitcoiners were already crazy 10 years ago and would have said FUD, stupid, da 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 da. But these Vanity Fair articles, these Nouriel Roubini quotes, these Washington Post articles had a lot more currency back then, right? They had a lot more sway. They had a lot more amplification. People actually, myself included, would have been like, oh, what did the New York Times say, right? Now, years later, we know it's impossible to do that. I mean, they don't even have a blue check anymore on Twitter because of all the stuff that's going on. And when you think about the conditions that we have now, what's going on, you can't help but marvel, first of all, at the benefits that we've had with Twitter and Elon Musk taking over. We're going to talk about the negative effects of some of that and where it's headed in a second. But even just seeing things like the following, right? So you get the NPR now is not tweeting anymore, right? They said they're not going to tweet anymore because they're now called state-sponsored or government-funded media. The BBC got the same title, government-funded media. And they said they're not going to tweet anymore. NPR is not going to tweet anymore, which is a win. It's just less propaganda, right? So they're saying it like, oh, we're going to punish Twitter. It's actually just clears the field and clears the disinformation and clears away the partisanship and the desire to spin people into more fighting and more partisan division, right? Because I don't see what else the NPR does other than that. So now New York Times without the check mark anymore. You see these arguments now that they try and propose, whether it's Bitcoin mining or this other one. Here's an article that was in the paper the past 2 days, both published in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Now, just think about this in the context of what we've learned about them with Bitcoin what we've learned about them through the Twitter files, what we've experienced, the amount of gaslighting we've experienced over the past few years with COVID and with Trump and with all this other stuff. So here's what they're going on about today. So this is about the Nord Stream pipeline. So just yesterday, Seymour Hersh was doing interviews in Europe, and he again said that Nord Stream was directed by Russia and Europe. So he's been public again, reiterating what he's saying. Seymour Hersh explained that Germany and Western Europe became hostages of a situation where pressure came from the US towards sanctions against the gas pipeline. But on the other hand, gas storage facilities were not filled, which forced Germany to resort to buying LNG from the United States and China. So he's basically saying to Germany, you don't have sovereignty right now. You're just listening to what America wants, and you're benefiting America, even though it might not be good for you, despite what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. So now the New York Times and the Washington Post yesterday both published the following story, both of them. Suspicions multiply as Nord Stream sabotage remains unsolved. I guess it is unsolved, but here's where it gets fun. Intelligence leaks surrounding who blew up most of the Russian-backed Nord Stream pipelines last September have provided more questions than answers. It may be in no one's interest to reveal more. Don't ask. The Washington Post saying exactly the same thing. At gatherings of European and NATO policymakers, officials have settled into a rhythm, said one senior European diplomat. Don't talk about Nord Stream. Leaders see little benefit from digging too deeply and finding an uncomfortable answer, the diplomat said, echoing sentiments of several peers in other countries who said they would rather not have to deal with the possibility that Ukraine or allies were involved. Remember the last fake news drop was just Ukrainian affiliated folks, like just on a whim, and did a deep water bomb, right? Deep water bombing. Now, this stuff is really important, right? So we can see the mainstream media narratives coming through, but I think with what happened with Twitter, I think it's become common knowledge that the mainstream media just doesn't have the punch it used to have, right? None of these articles are going to be taken seriously. They're telling folks, don't look into Nord Stream. Everyone already has, right? Everyone's already formed opinions. Now, I don't know if people are going to change their opinions, but people have formed opinions on what happened, and those are harder to change because they're part of narratives. They're part of narrative bias that people have, how they view the world, how they see the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, and those are becoming more and more crystallized each day. So now that you know that the mainstream media doesn't quite have the amplification powers there to persuade new to fight the battle, I revert to something I mentioned yesterday, right? And that is that the White House is going to be creating what they call an army of social media influencers. And apparently they're even going to get a spot in the White House in order to work together, coordinate, come up with a strategy and all that stuff. Now, I made the prediction yesterday, going to fail miserably, going to be stupid, but it shows the changing battle lines. Now, the good news is for us Bitcoiners, right? Twitter has its own problems, right? We can see with what's going on with Substack and what's going on with Musk, and who knows what he's doing in China. And some people say it's bad. I still think Musk is on, let's say, the good side, right? I still think Musk is on a side that's trying to perpetuate a better future for humanity. I think that's my feeling. I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong. I got a ton of blind spots. I don't know Elon Musk. I haven't spent any time with him. But the ability of these social media influencers that are being hired by the White House can't just be fixed by Twitter files. It can't be fixed by Elon Musk trying to drive Twitter to be the greatest news source in the world necessarily, right? It can be a great place for fighting, but it turns into hand-to-hand combat in a sense, right? It turns down to hand-to-hand combat. And if you look at what happened yesterday with the New York Times article, and if you look at the track record now that Bitcoiners have over the years of debunking news, you start to see how well Bitcoiners are armed. Forget about even Nostr for a second. It's not a tech answer. Bitcoiners individually were motivated yesterday to rip this thing apart. So you saw Pierre Rochard, you saw Daniel Batten. It's especially fun to see some of these progressive, sort of left wing folks who still actually have the patience to try to debunk the New York Times, right? Like someone like me is I'll just count New York Times articles for Moscow time. But this is someone who still thinks that, and we need it, right? Who went out and fought hand to hand. These people wrote long Twitter threads yesterday about where they got it wrong in the New York Times and how the data was manipulated, making conclusions about it being political first. And all of these things are really important because Bitcoin, in the end, they can create an army of influencers inside of the White House, and they can give them marching orders, and they can have them get access, and they can have them tied in even with the New York Times and the Washington Post to amplify stories that come out. But they can't compete against the millions and millions of degenerate psychopath Bitcoiners that are just sitting there waiting for this shit. They are reveling in these fights. When it happens, you know how many times I saw one of my favorite memes, like don't care, didn't read, the don't care, didn't read meme. It's becoming my favorite Bitcoin meme, right? Too long, don't care, didn't read. It's the type of irreverence that will help us win. But like I said, it is good that some people did read it, broke it down, found a way to deconstruct the arguments, blow a hole into their side, and relieve us from having to listen to any of them, right? So, and then, we don't. So Rickster Swickster says, about TikTok. Well, that's what becomes so dangerous, let's say, is that the TikTok folks, it looks like there's not going to be any ban, right? Because now we see the influencers getting hired by the White House. And remember what I said about TikTok months ago and what I said last week when the Restrict Act came out, and what I've been saying from the very start. You were going to see an A game in influence. You're going to see an A game in lobbying. You're going to see world-class manipulation of the legislative process in America. And indeed you have. You saw this crazy thing go out for the Restrict Act. That's dead in the water. It was a power grab for all social media, so that's not going anywhere. And in the end, I think TikTok walks, right? You get a bunch of debate, you get a bunch of talk around it, but it will just keep going forward. And if the White House is indeed hiring TikTok influencers for political purposes, that's the way things are headed, right? That's the way things are headed, which brings us back to our conclusion that the final showdown, and I think we'll see it in 2024. I think the election is going to distill the actual belligerents of World War III into their respective camps, right? As we've said many times, World War III is both between nations, governments, and people, right? And so that's a big part of World War III. And on another level, it's also between these broadcast systems and the types of arguments they make and the type of persuasion they engage in. And I think it's going to boil down to woke versus Bitcoin maximalism. And indeed, the toxicity of Bitcoin maximalists is the best weapon we have in this fight, right? These guys are not going to flinch. They're going to do this until every keyboard is destroyed from tapping on it and fighting the battle. And it's a big change, and it's a big advantage that we have. Just looking at NPR without its, thinking the blue check makes a difference. They're going to go, and now they're going to protest by not tweeting anymore. Right? This is the kind of thing that Bitcoiners just revel in. They're just going to make more and more memes about it. They're going to make more and more effective persuasion around all of this stuff. So we get the frontline battle of folks who will go in and tangle with the New York Times and the NPR on these hit pieces. We get Pierre Rochard with a video that they had created already. Now, remember, Bitcoiners even knew this hit piece was coming, right? Bitcoiners cited this hit piece months ago when people started to get contacted and said, this is coming. And people were prepared, it was dropped, and immediately they're fighting. They're finding out even, it turns into, I believed in 2016 election, and when 2017 came around, I believe the story of 2017 was 4chan. In particular, the story around the Shia LaBeouf Trump flag, and how these guys, the 4chan autists, the autistic army, weaponized autism, right? The weaponized autists that went after this flag, because it started in New York City. If you don't know the story of this thing, I think it was like resist or one of these ridiculous slogans, right? That the influencers for sure in the White House that are about to come are going to try and push those kinds of stories. So Shia LaBeouf put it at an art installation in Queens, New York. Now, people started trolling it. They started saying Hitler stuff on it. He had a camera and the flag. People started going and trolling this thing nonstop until they had to take it down. And then they started hiding the flag in different places, right? They're going to hide the flag here. They're going to hide the flag there. Eventually, it kept getting found, taken down, Pepe flags raised instead. Finally, what happened was they put the flag up in a middle of nowhere. All you saw was the sky, and the flag was there, and the camera was on the ground. They said it could have been anywhere in America. The autists, the weaponized autists on 4chan, found from the contrails behind airplanes and the schedule of their flight patterns, were able to isolate where the flag was. They found it and they took it down. Now, this story to some was just a little anomaly. To me, it was the greatest news story of 2017 as far as political news and media and communications go, because of what it showed was that the weaponized autism was being engaged in a way that was beneficial for society and helpful. Now, what you've got is the weaponized autists as mostly Bitcoiners, right? You get a whole army of weaponized autism. You know, you tell me if Francis Pouliot is not an autist, some kind of an autist guy in an endearing, happy way, but he's so toxic. I've known the guy for years. He's so incredibly toxic that there's something pure and noble about it. And his consistency and his commitment to this type of toxicity is something that we can marvel at and something we must appreciate, because it's that kind of stuff, it's that dedication that will mean that no paid influencer will ever compete with a Bitcoin degen fighting crazy person on the internet. There's no way. These people are that much crazier and will push the envelope again and again and again, and simply will not fail at this. I mean, how many Bitcoiners have looked themselves in the eye, looked deep inside to their soul and said, nope, won't sell, never happening, I'll go down with the ship, right? Most of the ones I know are like that. I'm like that. I've said it to you guys before, right? Don't trust. If anything goes wrong with Bitcoin, that's why we have to mention it's running each time here. If anything goes wrong with Bitcoin, I'm going to deploy narrative bias, confirmation bias. I'm going to have so much cognitive dissonance that I probably won't be a reliable source for you guys, right? Now, luckily, I think Bitcoin is something worth being faithful to, right? Worth committing to, worth seeing past its blemishes, because if we work together, we can really change the world if we're right about this stuff. And the folks who have been laughing at us for 10 years now, right, are still saying the same things. And each and every time we rebuke them, we push through, the world looks like we predicted, we gain in strength, right? So our strength and our resolve was greater than ever. Their arguments are weaker than ever. It's the same old stuff. It hasn't changed in 10 years. The hit pieces they used on the internet 11 years ago, same as today. The hit pieces they deployed on Bitcoin 10 years ago today sound identical to the hit pieces written just months ago when Bitcoin was experiencing troubles, on schedule troubles. Sorry, right? On schedule. Even despite FTX and all that stuff, I think most people in Bitcoin knew 2023 was going to be a tough year, because historically it's tough in 4-year cycles. And here we are, right? So all the stuff that was done yesterday, just hilarious, right? And again, you know, we have this advantage of having an army of influencers, having people that, influencers is the wrong word, having an army of people who are committed independently to push for what they believe in and to push the system forward is just an amazing breakthrough for us, right? You know, you can see things like, you know, here's community notes working perfectly on Twitter, right? Here's community notes working perfectly. Here's a doctor His name is Michael Greger, MD, Nutrition Facts, and he's got this story. I could have put this into fake news for the day, right? I could have put this into Moscow time. He says, as little as half an egg a day is associated with premature death, right? That's what he said. And of course, the community notes, which we've been talking about here, a real innovation in Twitter, caught it. And he said, Nutrition Facts was founded by Jesse and Julie Roche Foundation, which has a mission of ecological sustainability and plant-based diets. Public filings in 2020 suggest it is the only major funding source for this website. So right away, follow the money came through on the community notes. They were able to debunk these folks. And this is great. This is software doing it. But Bitcoiners have been doing this on the diet stuff for years now. We don't need community notes. We are a self-sorting algorithm when it comes to this stuff. Bitcoiners are sifting through health knowledge at a pace that no other tribe has done before. I mean, the amount of consensus Bitcoiners are coming to on what's healthy for physical health, right? Like even working out. I was a big believer for many years in long distance running and cardiovascular above all. And I did some weight training, but not as much as I probably should have, because I thought weights were like go kill yourself in the gym for an hour, right? Bitcoiners helped me, and the bro science folks that joined into Bitcoin helped me understand, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to lift weights for an hour to be strong, right? It's a short amount of time. I don't have to run 10 miles to be in shape. I can run less than a mile and have all the benefit that I would get out of running 10 miles. So there's a lot of things, and wear and tear. There's a lot of things I've learned personally about my physical health through Bitcoin community and through just the trust that Bitcoiners are able to build amongst each other and the verifiable results we all seem to be getting, right? All the folks that I know that practice a really simple diet plan, eating a certain way, exercising in a certain way, seem to be much healthier. All the Bitcoin folks that I know, right? My cohort from 2013 that I still talk with, that I'm still friends with, the people I've met along the way, all seem to be healthier now. I don't know a single Bitcoiner. And this is something I can even say is different with crypto, right? This is a major difference between crypto and Bitcoin. As someone who worked at CoinDesk for years, I saw the crypto thing, of course, right? Now, I always had a distinction. I come from an early time in the industry when the distinction was so easy to see. So I have that benefit, right? I didn't have to learn the lesson. The lesson was baked in if you were in Bitcoin in 2013, the difference between Ethereum, Bitcoin, and all the others, right? So that's not a lesson we had to learn just coming into the industry. So I have sympathy for folks who are new to the industry who don't see it, right? So I've always got time for people who enter the industry and shitcoin a lot. I think there's reasons why they do it. I'm not part of the toxic group that will shame even them, right? I'm there to say, well, maybe look at it this way, and Bitcoin's different, and that's all important stuff, right? But if you look at just the personal and the people that I know that have not made the transition from crypto to Bitcoin, that have been in it for 10 years, I know these people. Some of them are very rich, very successful, miserable, unhealthy, right? Still living the same lifestyle they did 10 years ago, complaining about all the same things they did 10 years ago, worried about regulations, worried about, FTX and what's going on with that stuff, right? Whereas Bitcoiners, healthier than ever, right? Happier than ever, despite how crazy the world is around us. It's one of the only cohorts that's managed to make it through this whole time period. 10 years now, 10 years. Many people 10 years ago learned about Bitcoin because of this early bull market that happened now 10 years ago. And all of these folks still in the game, right? Still playable characters. So the idea that Bitcoin has so many playable characters still in the game, healthier than they were 10 years ago, benefiting from their accurate predictions, navigating through time in a way that keeps their associates healthy, themselves healthy, their community healthy, moving forward without any worry about COVID. That was a thing most Bitcoiners were able to master simply because of their, simply because of the community, because of the toxic folks that were not afraid to say, this is a scam, that's stupid, don't do this. And the confidence you gain through having a community that's able to stand up to the New York Times and stand up to the gaslighters, right? Stand up to the folks who you need only follow the money to find out what their real thoughts are, and that's the case of this egg guy, right? You just need to find out that he's got this tie to these folks, and we get all of these different. You got that New York Times article itself, right? Broken down, as I said, by all kinds of influencers. I mentioned yesterday in that article they only cited Nick Carter once in something that he said that was false, right? And apparently they spent a lot of time with Nick. Which was, he said Bitcoin, I guess, doesn't use fossil fuels or something, and they of course did a context cut, drove the story home to make it sound like Nick Carter was an idiot, right, and didn't know what he was talking about. But here's where things get really fun, right? We've been talking about RFK Jr. a lot on this show, right? Remember, I started talking about RFK Jr. here in the context of Bitcoin and what it meant for Bitcoin, what it meant for the change that America is about to experience, and Bitcoin's role in it. I've been talking about RFK with everyone here since November, I think. Since November 2022, I've been mentioning his name in this context. Well, yesterday, he came out with one of the most amazing tweets I've seen in a long time from a presidential candidate. This is more detailed and specific than we're even hearing from Vivek Ramaswamy, who I understand is a Bitcoiner, who I'm trying to get to Bitcoin 2023. I was on a Spaces last week with Max and Stacy, and I brought up RFK with them, thinking it was an interesting story and I wanted to hear their opinion. They mentioned to me that they had met and talked with RFK years ago, and had his number. So we got his number. We're trying to get him to come to Bitcoin 2023, May 18th to 20th. Vivek should be there. No promises still. But I hope I get Bobby Kennedy Jr. And here's what he said. I'm going to read the tweet. It's amazing, right? So first of all, he's taking aim at this stupid argument that, you get all these people on the internet now. These will be these crypto influencers. These will be the influencers the White House hires, right? The CBDC, the Fed now is not even a blockchain. It's not even a CBDC now. Balaji had already corrected that. It's central bank digital control. Who cares if it's on a blockchain, uses cryptographic keys? It doesn't matter. The ends are the same. It's supervision of your money. It's the revocation of your money. It's the elimination of your money. It's total control by a third party. It's total control by a third party, right? Not just beware of third parties. It's total control by a third party. So here is what he says. The claim that FedNow is not the first step toward a CBDC would be more easily digestible were we not aware of the Biden administration's steady barrage of hostile broadsides against cryptocurrencies. Between 2008 and 2022, the Fed partnered with a handful of big banks to print 10 trillion, 10 centuries of wealth in 15 years, a bonanza for banksters. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin give the public an escape route from the splatter zone. That's good writing there. I like that, splatter zone, when this bubble invariably bursts. So the White House is colluding with the banksters to keep us all trapped in the bubble of profiteering and control. And here's where he cites Nick Carter. In his February 8th post on Pirate Wires, Nick Carter describes how the White House has organized bankers to participate in a sophisticated, widespread crackdown to destroy the crypto industry. Carter describes 15 incidents where President Biden has weaponized the FDIC, Office of the Controller of the Currency, and the Department of Justice to force crypto-friendly banks to close their doors to crypto firms December 3rd. The recent crackdown on crypto blocks exit ramps, removes alternative rails, and strengthens government control over both the financial and political systems. We should be wary, since CBDCs are the ultimate mechanisms for social surveillance and control. As Balaji Srinivasan says, the distinction between FedNow and a CBDC is important from a technical standpoint, but not from a civil liberties standpoint. Balaji compares FedNow to a virus that has evolved to evade recognition by changing its sequence without really changing its function. Now, if you remember, I did a whole thing on, I did my one on JP, hey guys, let me remind you, the FedNow is not a cryptocurrency. It's just a ledger, right? It's just a ledger, and it's not a cryptocurrency, right? So he was out there saying that, right? And I brought it up 2 weeks ago as the dumbest thing I'd ever heard, because Balaji is totally right. And this guy tried to fight Balaji on Twitter, and Balaji said to him, Who has the, do you get a key? Are there keys? Who has the keys, right? Of course, we talked about it yesterday. Cryptographic keys are currency in a decentralized world. They are the most efficient system ever invented. It's Satoshi's absolute greatest invention to show us that we can signal consent with a cryptographic key, that we can agree to something, and that we can use a digital signature ourselves as a bearer instrument in a network and in a system. It's one of the most, that is the invention. I often compare the bicycle, right? Bicycles to what the invention of the bicycle to what Satoshi did with Bitcoin, because everything about a bicycle was already invented. There was nothing new in the bicycle, right? It had a gear, it had pedals, it had a handlebar, wheels, right? Chain, all that stuff existed, all of it, right? But the first time someone orchestrated those technologies in that form, and the bike went on two wheels, it was magic. People went, "Oh God, yeah, what amazing!" And then you had all these mutant bikes that were invented, right, with the little wheel. Those are shitcoins, right? Those are shitcoin bikes, right? You get the little wheel, the big wheel, and all these crazy bikes you saw when bikes were first invented. I have always explained these stupid Ethereum things that way, right? Well, you had that weird bike with the big one tire and the little tire, right? That's Ethereum in a nutshell, right there, right? Of course, when you see the invention, you say, "Oh, I can copy that. I can make iterations on that," right? But remember, the orchestration of this technology, the simplicity of it, how it is obvious once you see it put together, is at once a sign of the genius, right? It's the elegant symmetry of the architecture of Bitcoin that when you look at the coordination of a P2P network and cryptographic key signaling in this way, using digital signatures in this way, you can see that this is just such an elegant solution. And it's one of those things where you're like, how did it take so long to even invent this, right? But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that led to a whole proliferation of understanding of what keys can do as bearer instruments in a decentralized network. And you get a guy like JP, who's been around forever, and he can't see the genius of cryptographic and the importance of where you put the cryptographic keys in the overall structure, right? Or it's not the same, right? Well, of course not, right? And Balaji, of course, ends him. And then you see he's got to run away because he has no argument to who's got the keys, right? The keys are everything in this. Not your keys, not your coins is not just a euphemism for saving money and protecting yourself from financial calamity. It's a way to understand how the system works, right? You have to understand if anyone else has a key, you do not have a bearer instrument anymore. It's finished, right? Now, multi-sig is a different story and all that stuff. But what we see here is the people, right? Remember, Nick Carter, Balaji Srinivasan. These are people that were really only from our little bubble over the years. And now they're being regularly cited by political candidates for the presidency of the highest order, like a Kennedy. And it's why I continue to predict that Bitcoin is going to be front and center. It's going to be the main political debate in the 2024 presidential election, the main one. I see it taking over the entire campaign, perhaps, right, to become the most important question, because it focuses the entire tension around the changes America's going through right now with media, with deep state, with the entire corruption of our political system. It focuses that all into one neat, tiny package. And the cognitive load for people to understand the debate is lessened by having Bitcoin as the fulcrum, Bitcoin as the pivot point in our political debate. So the more energy that's pushed towards that, the better. And then that means that the 2024 election really, discount the New York Times, discount the Washington Post. They can't persuade people anymore. It's over. Bring in these influencers from the White House. And now you start to see what the 2024 campaign is going to be all about. It's going to be all about Bitcoin, independent-minded people fighting against narratives, recreating them, using memes, and just burying these low IQ paid shills. And it's going to be something that is glorious to behold, right? And perfect for people who have been predicting this for years. And so here we are, right? We've got main political candidates involved in this stuff. We've got now interesting debates all around the world. What France has done in the past few days to the U.S. Prospects to manipulate the situation in Ukraine and Taiwan has, I think, completely altered the equation. So Macron yesterday, of course, saying we are reduce our dependency, and listen to these words, on the extraterritoriality of the U.S. dollar. That's some punchy stuff, right? That's some punchy stuff. Extraterritoriality of the U.S. dollar, and then is brought up the nuclear stuff, right? Brought up nuclear proliferation in France, working with China. That was part of the announcements, saying we're not going to go defend Taiwan. America's on its own. We're not bound by that, right? And then on his way now to Holland today to talk about nuclear proliferation over there. So European countries now no longer under the sway of the petrodollar at all. At all. It looks like they're out, right? If France is out, Holland is out, Germany, you gotta. They're still worried, it seems, about what's going on with Greta, and they're not participating because it found out yesterday that their energy minister even said, no, we're not pushing these nuclear reactors forward. So that's a no-go, right? So there you go. It's going to be a big fight between toxic Bitcoiners, Bitcoin people on the internet fighting against whatever this White House influencer gang is all about. And the problem is the right wing online guys get caught up. Remember, I've said for a long time this trans thing is a trap, right? It's a trap, and if you fall into that trap, you're going to be turning in circles for a long time, right? And I've been recommending people not fall into that for as long as I've been talking about RFK here, right? As long as I've been talking about RFK, I've been warning you against the dopamine dealers who will jack you up, right? Now, I'll admit there's some crazy shit going on with the trans thing. Remember, we are very pro LGBTQ plus here. We are. We think adults can do what they want. There's a bunch of stuff about the trans debate I don't like. I don't like hearing about the kids and all of this stuff, right? The Dalai Lama is disgusting, right? I'm with you on all that. I'm with everyone on that stuff. That stuff's disgusting. You can talk about it all you want. The problem is if you think that your enragement and getting angry about what some liberal said about trans, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help anybody. It's just falling into the trap. I think that the if the forces of freedom are going to win the 2024 political lottery to change the world, a little bit through politics, to at least open the road to the change we want to see, to get them out of the way, we won't get there unless we keep it focused on Bitcoin. If other Bitcoiners aren't strong enough on this level, and the normal right wing hand-to-hand combat guys jump in with against the online influencers in the White House, it ain't going to go well. You're going to be talking about trans the whole 2024 election. That's not a good scene, right? That's not a good scene. And it's been my worry for a long time that the amount of dopamine released to right-wing people because of enragement around the trans thing is a false flag, right? It's leading you off into the forest of not getting anywhere, right? So now there's all kinds of things that definitely deserve to be talked about, right? But I think turning it into a major political issue in 2024 doesn't do anyone any favors, and just continues to be a distraction. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Yeah, the divisive program, the whole Fox News scene. I don't think it's divisive by design. I think these folks know how to get their audiences angry and are motivated by it. It just happens to be antithetical to each other. So it's divisive, by the point is not to divide. The point is to make your side angry, thereby dividing people. All right, let me get to some of these comments. A lot of comments. Love it, guys. Let me get back to the. All right, here we go. I'm glad Elon came in to an extent. All these media are literally state. Yeah, no. I'm glad he came. No, I have still appreciation for Elon. What I mean is, you don't want to make him into a total hero. There's a lot of questions there. I think that we don't get to where we are if he doesn't buy Twitter. So I'm eternally grateful, right? Absolutely. But what have you done for me lately? When has he bought Bitcoin last? A space to spread the propaganda. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what that one is. Good comparison. Meta platforms flag Tulsi Gabbard CBDC warning is false. Twitter made no comment on the same post. Yeah. Yeah, don't listen to the technical specs on CBDCs ever. They're all stupid. If Elon Musk was a good man, he would promote Bitcoin, not shitcoins. On the other hand, he may be threatened. Yeah, my theory always, Calvin, was that he used the Doge as a proxy, but I'm mind reading. I don't know that. It's my hypothesis, but I don't know. They're taking a page from TikTok. Yeah. Catch the woke. Yeah, Calvin, it was the best. If you weren't around for that, you missed some good times. Only man's crazy. Yeah, one man's crazy is another man's principle. Yeah, we're a bunch of religious zealots and damn. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it is. I have never shied away from the religious aspects of Bitcoin. It's very important. For the fiat legacy is bigger than the urge to be a beneficiary of it. Hence Bitcoin. Yeah. Bitcoin goes up, making Bitcoiners stronger. It can only go one way. Yeah. Again, we don't seem to be dissuaded. We're not shrinking as a group. We're growing, despite the price changes, the crazy, roller coaster. We have unpolitical currency of mass adoption. Yeah. Dr. Jack Cruz has done a lot to help the health consciousness of the crypto space. Yeah, I think so. And even just the bro science guys. I like those guys. We got a lot of the weightlifter, like AJ Cortez is going to be at Bitcoin 2023. We'll have Zuby again. These are all these kind of bro weightlift guys. I love it. Health. Good morning. 9 years and still going strong. Awesome, BTC Moon guy. Yeah, 2014 was a good time to come in. That was $200 Bitcoin days. I remember those days. Jack's deep into circadian biology. I didn't know that. His information on the sun and its effects on our bodies is mind blowing too. Really, I'll check that out. Yeah, I'm a big sun guy. I get my morning. That's why I take the picture of the morning sunrise every morning. I'm out there, getting my vitamin D. Bitcoin is the bicycle of money. Yeah. I'm not sure that the bike was the shitcoin. It was because there was no chains yet, right? No, I think the chain came along. There was chains in the early days, is my understanding. I've never seen one. I meant the shit coins were like, the bikes you never see anymore. It had like the little back tire and the massive front tire. That's like the Ethereum of bicycles. Satoshi just weaponized greed against banks, enabling money. Yeah, and I think that the greed against banks, the weaponizing greed in the energy sector is the next thing. Right, that's our way out. Remember, I've said many times, it's the energy companies, just like I mentioned with Nord Stream. They're the ones who backstop this. They're the ones who said it was possible, and they're the ones who benefit from it, right? So, in many ways, the corporate governments of the world actually don't. The governments of the world actually don't control as much as we think. The corporate entities around energy have a much bigger influence than I think most people perceive. Our job is to make them richer, and then co-opt them, which will lead to a Bitcoin standard in the world. All you have to do is the energy companies agree that Bitcoin is a settlement, the best settlement network for energy markets. And I think it's hyper Bitcoinization. I think we're done with the US dollar once that happens, which I think is going to happen sooner rather than later, because the BRICS shitcoin ain't going to fly. That dog ain't going to hunt. And people are going to look for alternatives, as Macron was saying, to the US dollar, which means nature abhors a vacuum. He'll be in Miami. When data, Jack's got an office over in Destin. We'll see if Jack makes it this year. We'll see. He usually says it last minute, and he does like to, I think, save his appearances because I've only ever managed to book him at the top of the market each time, and I think that's done deliberately in his part. Not that he wouldn't. He goes to smaller shows in off years, but he was just at the Noster show down in Costa Rica called Nostrica. I prefer dedicated Bitcoiners. Yeah. The whole Fox News is keeping us divided. Divisive programming. Yeah. First heard about Bitcoin during Spring Pump. Yeah, a lot of that. I'd heard about it in 2012. I got addicted in 2013. This was the year that I was totally into it. P-Man Van, waste of time and energy. Yeah, look, I mean, there's real things there. It's children and da-da-da. But it's another one of these dopamine addiction things. No good. Get enraged about this. What are people proposing? Like, the people who get enraged, what are you proposing? That we go tell parents? Because it's not the kids who are going to these brunches, right? They're not the ones who are like, "Daddy, Mommy, take me to a brunch with trans people." That's never happening. That's not happening at all. It's the parents. So what's the solution? To tell parents what to do? It ain't gonna work, right? It ain't gonna work. You can't tell them much. So I mean, the impression with the glasses rocks at 2x speed. Let me know about that impression. I'm not sure if it's adding anything. If you like it, I'll keep doing it. I'll try and make it better. Bitcoiners were damn good too, but you can't be any geek off the street. You got to be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Earn your keep. Bitcoiners mount up. Yeah, that's unfortunately, guys, part of our reality now. I live in a conceal carry implied state, which I never thought I would have to take advantage of, but I do. Offensive brain is much like an escapement in the mechanical clock. I never thought of that. The escapement is the part that has a rocking lever that allows the gear to turn, then stops it from turning. Yeah, that's good, Boo Boo Bodacious. I like that. I'm gonna look more into that. I really like that. I first heard about the breakup on Jack's forums. Oh, really? I'm missing something. I'm missing something there, Daniel. Let me know in a DM later what that means. The big wheel was because the pedals were attached. Not the gear and the chain. Okay. I didn't know that. It required to pedal the big wheel. Okay, I see. I didn't know how they were designed. Local first, I start with myself, then my local, not shouting at the TV about how the wall. Yeah. Love that idea you call activation. Yeah, that's what it's all about. All right, team. Thanks, bud. Thanks, P-Man Van. Good day, all. Keep stacking. Bitcoin Graffiti. Peace. Boo Boo Bodacious. Peace. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.